I never imagined that a single phone call could completely change my life. It was a Monday morning when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Groaning, I picked it up, expecting telemarketers or wrong numbers. Instead, a frantic voice came through. Barely coherent, but desperate. Please. We need help. Hundreds of animals. We don't know how much longer they can survive. I froze. Hundreds of animals. My heart skipped a beat. I had always loved animals, volunteering at shelters whenever I could. But this sounded catastrophic. I asked for details, and what I heard made my stomach drop. An illegal breeding facility, hidden deep in the outskirts of the city, had been abandoned by its operators. Hundreds of dogs, cats, rabbits, birds, and even more exotic creatures were left to fend for themselves. Food was running out, water scarce, and the conditions were deteriorating by the hour. Disease was spreading fast. They had tried contacting local authorities, but bureaucracy had slowed everything down. If no one intervened immediately, all those innocent lives were doomed. I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I wasn't trained for large-scale animal rescues, but my gut told me I had to do something. I grabbed my coat, threw together supplies, and jumped into my car. On the drive, my mind raced. How could I possibly save hundreds of animals? Where would I take them? How could I ensure they survived the journey? I had no answers, but I had a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. When I arrived at the facility, the sight made my heart shatter. The place was a dilapidated warehouse, walls peeling, windows shattered, and the stench of decay filling the air. I could hear the faint whimpers and cries even before I stepped inside. Dogs were pacing in cages too small for them, some barely able to stand. Cats huddled in corners, filthy and terrified. Birds fluttered in panic, their feathers matted with grime. And then I saw them rabbits with swollen eyes, some barely breathing, guinea pigs trembling in fear. I knelt down and tried to comfort them as best I could. I whispered soft words, offering whatever calm I could. But reality was harsh. I couldn't stay in one place for long. Every second counted. I began methodically. First, I secured the animals that were easiest to move, the smaller ones. Birds were gently caught and placed into carriers I had brought with me. Rabbits and guinea pigs were loaded into boxes lined with blankets. I marked each container carefully, ensuring I knew which animal belonged where. Then came the dogs. Some were aggressive, scared out of their minds, but I couldn't afford to panic. I talked to them, my voice steady. Slowly, one by one, I coaxed them out of the cages. Some I carried, others I had to leash and guide. Every time a dog lunged or barked in fear, my heart pounded, but I reminded myself they weren't attacking me. They were terrified, desperate, and in pain. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, casting a harsh light on the chaos inside the warehouse. Sweat soaked my clothes, cuts from broken cages and sharp edges covered my arms, but I refused to stop. Every animal I moved felt like a small victory, but I knew the battle was far from over. By late afternoon, I had rescued roughly half of the animals. My energy was fading, but then I realized something terrifying. I hadn't accounted for the large animals. There were 2 horses, a few goats, and even a llama, all in pens that hadn't been maintained. They were weak from starvation, some unable to stand. I knew moving them would require more than my strength alone. I ran back to my car and called everyone I could think of: friends, volunteers, local animal rescue groups. I explained the situation, urgency laced in every word. Slowly, help started arriving. People brought cages, blankets, food, and water. Together, we devised a system. Small animals first, then medium, and finally the large ones with ropes, harnesses, and sheer teamwork to guide them safely. Even as help arrived, the warehouse was far from safe. The floors were slick with filth, some areas flooded from a broken pipe. Rats scurried in the shadows, adding to the horror. Yet, despite the danger, there was an unspoken bond between all of us, the rescuers and the rescued. Each animal that stepped out of that warehouse was a miracle, and every step forward was a testament to resilience, courage, and compassion. As night fell, I looked around. The warehouse, once a nightmare, was now empty, or almost. Just a few frightened cats lingered in the corners, refusing to leave. I knelt beside them, offering gentle words and the last bits of patience I had. Slowly, one by one, they allowed themselves to be lifted, and the last animals were finally rescued. We loaded them into trucks, vans, and whatever vehicles we had, driving them to temporary shelters. veterinary clinics, and foster homes. The relief on their faces, or what I could interpret as relief, was overwhelming. Every wagging tail, every cautious nuzzle, every frightened blink reminded me that life had been saved today, and that was worth every ounce of exhaustion. The next weeks were a whirlwind. I coordinated with veterinarians, animal behaviorists, and shelters to ensure every creature received medical attention. Many had severe infections, malnutrition, and trauma. Some were too scared to eat at first, others refused to trust humans. I spent hours, days, even nights sitting with them, speaking softly, offering food by hand, and showing that not every human was a threat. But it wasn't just physical healing that mattered, it was emotional recovery. I watched a timid dog named Max, who had been cowering in a corner of a cage, slowly learn to trust again. It took weeks before he wagged his tail without fear, but the moment he did, I felt a joy I had never experienced before. There was Bella, a beautiful white rabbit with red eyes, who had barely survived the first night. Her energy returned slowly, and she grew fond of sitting on my lap as I read aloud from old books I had at home. Watching her hop around again for the first time in weeks was like witnessing a sunrise after a storm. I documented everything: the process of rescue, recovery, and release. Social media was a powerful tool, and I wanted people to see the scale of what had happened. But as the posts went up, something unexpected happened. Donations started pouring in. People from across the country, inspired by the story, sent food, medical supplies, and offers to foster. Volunteers traveled miles to help. The story wasn't just about saving animals anymore, it was about a community rising together. Months passed, and the animals flourished. Dogs found loving homes, cats were adopted by families who promised to care for them forever. Rabbits and guinea pigs became cherished pets. And even the larger animals like horses and goats were placed in sanctuaries where they could roam freely. Through it all, I learned lessons I had never anticipated. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's a quiet voice saying, "I'll try again tomorrow." Compassion isn't just about grand gestures, it's in the small acts of kindness. The gentle touch, the patience to listen without expecting anything in return. And hope is contagious. When people see that one person can make a difference, they start believing they can too. The experience changed me. I no longer saw animals as just creatures needing food or shelter. I saw their stories, their resilience, their silent pleas for help. I realized that saving 1,000 animals wasn't just about numbers. It was about every heartbeat I preserved, every life that had been given a second chance. Even now, years later, I remember that warehouse. The smell, the sounds, the fear, but also the courage, the determination, and the love that emerged in the darkest corners. I saved 1,000 animals from dying, yes, but in return, they saved a part of me, to the part that sometimes doubts, sometimes fears, but ultimately refuses to give up on what truly matters. Every time I see a dog wag its tail with unbridled joy, a cat purring on a windowsill, or a rabbit hopping freely in the grass, I remember those days. I remember the weight of responsibility, the exhaustion that left me shaking, and the indescribable joy of witnessing life triumph against the odds. People often ask me, "How did you do it?" And I smile, knowing that the answer is simple, yet profound. I did it because I had to. Because when faced with the choice between inaction and life, there is no question. You act, you fight, you love, and sometimes that's all it takes to save 1,000 lives and countless hearts along the way. And so, the story continues. Not just in the animals I saved, but in every life they touch. Every person inspired to help, every child who learns kindness, every community that rises to the challenge. Saving 1,000 animals was never just my story, it was a story of humanity, courage, and hope. In the end, it wasn't about me at all. It was about giving a second chance, about believing that even in the darkest places, light can be found, and that every life, no matter how small, is worth fighting for. And I will carry that lesson with me forever.